Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is November 27th. Happy Christmas Eve to everybody out there across the region. Taking a look at the infrared satellite imagery this morning, we got BC, Washington, Oregon off to the right. You can still see we got some clouds streaming into British Columbia. We're going to have some persistent precipitation here, mainly north of Vancouver Island, but across British Columbia. Some Arctic air slides across northern BC and mainly stays east of the Rockies. And then we'll take a look at the extended forecast as we have a return to probably some more active weather as we start to head on in towards the first week of December. I stopped this one. This is the visible satellite imagery this morning. You still see we have this persistent showers, strip and drab here across western Washington. Just continues. I was hoping it would clear out a little bit quicker than this, but alas, here we are, and this will probably continue on for some areas as we go through the day today. Not a washout or anything here, but still some of that persistent rainfall. However, you can see places east of the mountains are drying out a bit here, and not much precipitation to speak of across a lot of the rest of the region. And we'll be looking at this here on a daily basis. We're looking at storm reports here across the Pacific Northwest. Nothing to speak of for yesterday because, things are still pretty quiet right now. No storm system impacting the area. Now, taking a look at this, you can see the showery activity across some of the Puget Sound northern portions there. Maybe a snow shower or two across the Cascades, Idaho, western Montana, some of the Cascades of Washington as well, but not too big of a deal. Nothing you won't be able to handle if you are out and about. And then we scroll on in through Friday. You see some of that snow continuing for some portions of the higher terrain of BC. Maybe Vancouver Island getting some snow at the higher terrain there as well as we go on in through Friday afternoon, Black Friday coming up. Now, taking a look at 6-hour snow, 10-to-1 ratio. So I want to point this out just because if you are north of Vancouver Island, you're still getting some of this persistent precipitation as we have a bit of a system in advance of that Arctic air sliding off to the east. This isn't going to impact Seattle or Portland or anything like that or Spokane, but it could bring a little bit of light snow for northwest Montana, some of the Rockies of BC, Alberta, and you can kind of see the snow piling up a little bit here as we go through the day, Friday night, and on into Saturday morning as well. So just a heads up for that if you are north across British Columbia. Now, we're looking at BC here, and there's Washington, Idaho, and Montana. What we're looking at here is mean sea level pressure. So I put this into motion. This high pressure out here marks that Arctic air, but you can also see we got a low pressure system here. We got the height falls in front of that Arctic air, and you can see that system kind of slide down BC. So that is that weather maker I just mentioned on the last slide there. So thought I'd show you that. And you can kind of see how that high pressure stays to the east of the Rocky Mountains mainly. It is difficult for this to get down into the Pacific Northwest, kind of a natural barrier from these very cold Arctic air masses making their way further south into Washington and Oregon. I will be going over some of our greatest Arctic outbreaks here in the Pacific Northwest, and I'll go over in detail what it takes to bring some of that cold Arctic air down into the region and why it can be so difficult sometimes. Now, this is looking at North America. This is 2-meter temperature in Celsius. And once you see the gray and the white lines here, that is below freezing, or 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and you can see it push down across Nebraska and Iowa there, and includes Wisconsin. But if I put this in motion, I'm just going to let this play through, and you can kind of see the diurnal cycle, the warm up here across Mexico, for example. If I go back there, you can see this Arctic air kind of keeping east of the Rockies and spreading down into some of the northern states as well. So always like to show some of these visual diagrams, and you can kind of see, again, the diurnal and nocturnal cycle as you go day by day. Now, looking at the GFS, this is at 5,000 feet. So this is the Arctic air off to the north, and you can see some of this spills out over the Gulf of Alaska. And again, that's that weak system there. And you can see Arctic air that mainly stays off to the east of the Rockies as it slides down across Montana and then the Dakotas eventually. So yeah, that wraps up that system. Now, taking a look at holiday week, we are green across the board. Spokane National Weather Service, little snow accumulation. Impacts are not expected. I-90, Highway 2, 97, you name it, it's looking pretty good here, especially for today and as we go on in through the weekend as you're going home from your Thanksgiving activities. And this is Pocatello. They do mention this as well. Some showers wrapping up today possibly, but then looking green as we go through the weekend. This is Pendleton talking about the temperatures coming up. High temperatures in the 30s for a lot of the areas, but if you go into the lower elevations, you're up into the 40s. No rain or snow in the forecast for the Pendleton. Turkey, I guess they named it Jack. So there you go. Now, taking a look at the European Artificial Intelligence. This is that Arctic air kind of sliding through, but we're still going to be dealing with this ridging as we go through the early portion of next week. But then we quickly have systems trying to knock on the door for British Columbia and perhaps getting down to the Pacific Northwest. A bit of a transient ridge there, but things become more zonal as we go through the first week of December. So, talking December 7th here, and then additional systems potentially pouring into the Pacific Northwest. You can see this zonal flow here as the door open for additional systems as we go through, the first half of December. We'll be breaking that down day by day, of course. Now, looking at the European artificial intelligence on the left versus the GFS on the right, there goes that system spawned by that Arctic air, mainly keeping that precipitation across British Columbia. And then as we go on in through the early portion of next week, you can see the GFS starts to bring precipitation down across southwest BC and Washington a bit sooner. The European is a little bit later with that system as we go on in towards next Friday here. So we do have that agreement between the models that we are going to start to get active again. And some of these have a little bit of an atmospheric river look to them as they push into the Pacific Northwest. The storms really get ramped up here again across the Gulf of Alaska. And you can kind of see the European hinting again at atmospheric river potential as we go through the extended. And in fact, if I go ahead and do this, there's always something fun in the GFS fantasy forecast. We'll see at the very end of the 06Z. Let's back that up because the 12Z is not done yet. I just want to show you this. There's always something fun at the end of the forecast. Look at that windstorm here across Pacific Northwest. Take that with a grain of salt. That is entertainment only at this point. 6 to 10 day above average across a lot of the west. Look at this below average signal across a lot of the west as well. 8 to 14 day. This might start flip-flopping here because as we go through the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th, it may start to get a bit more wet across Pacific Northwest. So that may switch up here. We'll see what the Climate Prediction Center says about that. But anyway, hope you guys are all set for Thanksgiving. I'm probably going to go out and document some more wind damage, which, by the way, I was going to show a little bit of that, but I'm actually working on a video, so I'll just wait for that. Some pretty impressive mountain wave activity, big portions of forest blown down. I shouldn't say big, but pretty notable swaths of trees blown down by some winds, probably exceeding 90 miles per hour. And they're in such localized individual areas, and sometimes the wind directions are different. You can check me out on Blue Sky and see some of those pictures, but I'll be releasing a video on that here coming up over the next couple of days as well. But I'll be out documenting again today with my drone. So if you see me out there, say hi. Otherwise, I will see you guys again tomorrow, and I will talk to you guys then.